Welcome back to Kenya Constitution Explained. In today's episode, we dive into Chapter 4, the Bill of Rights. This is one of the most important chapters in the entire Constitution because it protects the rights and freedoms of every individual. It is sometimes called the soul of the Constitution. Let's go through the articles step by step. Article 19, Rights and Fundamental Freedoms. This article begins by declaring that the Bill of Rights is an essential part of democracy in Kenya. It says, rights belong to every person, not because the state gives them, but because they are inherent in all human beings. The purpose of recognizing and protecting rights is to preserve human dignity, promote social justice, and protect freedom. Article 20, Application of the Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights applies to all laws and binds all state organs and people. That means both government and private individuals must respect and uphold rights. Courts are directed to develop the law in ways that expand human rights, not restrict them. Article 21. Implementation of Rights and Fundamental Freedoms. The state must respect, protect, promote, and fulfill rights. This is not optional, it's a duty. Every state organ and public officer is required to observe and implement rights with special focus on the vulnerable, including women, children, the elderly, and persons with disabilities. Article 22, Enforcement of the Bill of Rights. Every person has the right to go to court if their rights are threatened or violated. Even a group or someone acting on behalf of others can file a case. This ensures that justice is accessible even for those who may not have the means to fight alone. Article 23. Authority of courts to uphold the Bill of Rights. Courts have the power to hear and decide cases about rights. They can issue orders like compensation, injunctions, or declarations to protect people's freedoms. Article 24. Limitation of rights and fundamental freedoms. Rights are not absolute. They can be limited, but only in ways that are reasonable and justifiable in a democratic society. For example, freedom of expression does not allow hate speech, and freedom of movement can be limited during emergencies. Article 25. Rights that cannot be limited. There are 4 rights that can never be taken away under any circumstance. Freedom from torture and cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment. Freedom from slavery or servitude. The right to a fair trial. The right to an order of habeas corpus, to challenge unlawful detention. Articles 26-59, Specific Rights and Freedoms. The Constitution then goes on to list rights in detail. These include right to life, Article 26. Equality and freedom from discrimination, Article 27. Human dignity, Article 28. Freedom and security of the person, Article 29. Freedom of conscience, religion, belief, and opinion, Article 32. Freedom of expression, Article 33. Freedom of the media, Article 34. Access to information, Article 35. Freedom of association, Article 36. Right to assembly, demonstration, picketing, and petition, Article 37. Political rights, Article 38. Economic and social rights, including health, housing, food, water, education, and social security, Article 43. Rights of arrested persons, Article 49. Rights of persons with disabilities, Article 54. Rights of children, Article 53. Rights of minorities and marginalized groups, Article 56. Consumer rights, Article 46. And many more. These articles make the Bill of Rights not just about civil and political freedoms, but also about social and economic rights. This is one of the things that makes Kenya's constitution stand out globally. Conclusion. So what's the big lesson from Chapter 4? It tells us that rights are not gifts from government. They are inherent to every person. It makes them enforceable in court. It sets limits to prevent abuse, and it guarantees that certain rights can never be touched. The Bill of Rights is the shield that protects every Kenyan, ensuring dignity, justice, and equality. It is the chapter that gives real meaning to the phrase, "we the people." In the next episode, we'll explore Chapter 5, Land and Environment, a chapter that deals with one of the most sensitive and important issues in Kenya's history. Don't forget to subscribe and continue this journey with us. Welcome back to Kenya Constitution Explained. In this episode, we explore Chapter 5, Land and Environment. Land has been at the heart of Kenya's struggles, politics, and economy for decades, and this chapter sets the principles for how land is owned, used, and protected. It also deals with environmental stewardship, reminding us that the earth we enjoy today must also be safeguarded for future generations. Let's go through each article step by step. Article 60, Principles of Land Policy. Land in Kenya must be managed in ways that promote equity, efficiency, productivity, and sustainability. Principles include equitable access, security of land rights, elimination of gender discrimination in land ownership, and encouragement of sound conservation. This article recognizes that land is not just property, but also heritage and livelihood. Article 61, Classification of Land. Kenya's land is classified into three categories: public land, community land, and private land. This helps determine who owns what and how it can be used. Article 62, Public Land. This is land owned collectively by the people of Kenya and held in trust by the national or county governments. Examples include state forests, water bodies, and government land. Article 63, Community Land. Community land is held by communities identified on the basis of ethnicity, culture, or similar interest. Examples include pastoralist grazing areas. It is protected so that communities are not unfairly deprived of their heritage. Article 64, Private Land. This is land owned by individuals or corporations under freehold or leasehold. The article affirms the right to private ownership while balancing it with obligations of responsible use. Article 65, Land Ownership by Non-Citizens. Non-citizens cannot own freehold land in Kenya. They can only hold land on the basis of leasehold for a period not exceeding 99 years. This protects national interests while still allowing foreign investment. Article 66, Regulation of Land Use and Property. The state has the power to regulate land use in the interest of public good. For example, government can limit land use to protect the environment or to ensure equitable distribution, but must do so fairly and lawfully. Article 67, National Land Commission. This article establishes the National Land Commission, NLC. Its functions include managing public land, recommending a national land policy, advising government on land registration, and investigating historical injustices. The NLC is a key institution to make land governance more transparent. Article 68, Legislation on Land. Parliament must pass laws to implement this chapter, such as laws on land registration, maximum landholding, recognition of matrimonial property rights, and laws to protect community land. Article 69, Obligations in respect of the environment. Every person has a duty to cooperate with state organs to protect and conserve the environment. The state must ensure sustainable exploitation of natural resources, work to increase forest cover to at least 10%, protect biodiversity, and encourage public participation in environmental management. Article 70, Enforcement of Environmental Rights. Anyone who believes their right to a clean and healthy environment has been violated can go to court. The court can issue orders to stop harmful activities, require cleanup, or enforce conservation measures. Article 71, Agreements relating to natural resources. Any contract or agreement for exploitation of natural resources, like mining or oil, must be ratified by Parliament. This ensures transparency and national oversight in how resources are used. Article 72, Legislation on the Environment. Parliament is required to pass laws that give effect to environmental principles, ensuring protection and sustainable management. Conclusion. So, what do we learn from Chapter 5? It tells us how land in Kenya is classified and owned, protects communities and individuals, and sets limits on foreign ownership. It creates the National Land Commission to bring accountability, and it places environmental protection as a duty for both government and citizens. The takeaway is clear: Land and environment are not just about today, they are about fairness, justice, and responsibility for generations to come. In the next episode, we'll move to Chapter 6, Leadership and Integrity, a powerful chapter that sets standards for those who hold public office. Don't forget to subscribe and continue this journey with us. Welcome back to Kenya Constitution Explained. Today we move to Chapter 6, Leadership and Integrity. This chapter is about the standards that those in power must live by. It reminds us that leadership is not just about holding office. It is about service, trust, and accountability. Let's go through each article, step by step. Article 73, Responsibilities of Leadership. Authority in public service is a trust, not a privilege. It must be exercised in a way that is consistent with the purpose of the Constitution, demonstrates respect for the people, and brings honor to the nation. Leaders must serve selflessly, honestly, and in the public interest. Key principles include objectivity, accountability, discipline, and commitment to good governance. Article 74, Oath of Office of State Officers. Before assuming office, every state officer must take an oath or affirmation of office. This oath is a promise to obey, respect, uphold, and defend the Constitution and to faithfully serve the people of Kenya. Article 75, Conduct of State Officers. State officers must behave, both in public and private, in a manner that avoids bringing disrepute to the office. They must not demean their office, misuse their position for personal gain, or compromise the integrity of the office. Even in private life, a leader is expected to maintain integrity. Article 76, Financial Probity of State Officers. Leaders must avoid financial conflicts of interest. They cannot hold more than 2 paying positions, cannot improperly use public resources, and must avoid practices that create personal enrichment at the expense of the public. This is to curb corruption and misuse of public funds. Article 77. Restriction on activities of state officers. State officers cannot engage in activities that conflict with their public duties. For example, they cannot run a business that creates a conflict of interest with their government role. They also cannot hold any other state office or employment while in their current role. After leaving office, certain restrictions continue to apply to prevent abuse of power. Article 78, Citizenship and Leadership. Only Kenyan citizens may hold state office. However, a citizen of Kenya who also holds dual citizenship can still serve, provided the other citizenship does not create loyalty conflicts. Article 79, Legislation to establish an Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. This article requires Parliament to set up an independent commission to oversee compliance with integrity standards. This became the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, EACC, tasked with investigating, monitoring, and enforcing ethics in leadership. Article 80, Legislation on Leadership. Parliament must pass laws to give full effect to Chapter 6. These laws should outline details on ethics, accountability, and penalties for misconduct. This ensures the principles in the Constitution are put into practice through legislation. Conclusion. So what does Chapter 6 tell us? It tells us that leadership in Kenya is not about privilege, it's about trust. Leaders must serve selflessly, avoid corruption, and uphold dignity in both public and private life. It establishes the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission and requires laws to enforce these standards. The big takeaway is this. Chapter 6 is the people's safeguard against bad leadership. It sets the minimum standards for integrity, honesty, and accountability in public office. Leaders are reminded that they hold